Check Podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and this is Chamber Chats, being done, as always, in the podcasting studios of one of our chamber champions, the Czech Media Group. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I live and work in the ancestral unceded territories of the Lekwungen-speaking nations, known to us as the Songhees and the Esquimalt. And Chamber Chats is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. Well, spring weather is here. People are cycling more. I mean, we can cycle all year here, which is one of the great things about living here. I'm a cyclist. I ride an e-bike. Amanda rides an e-bike, so I love it. I love the trails. I love the bike lanes. I love it all. But biking itself has taken a huge jump during the pandemic, and I want to talk about that with a guy that's joining us here. His name is Robert Kemp, and he is the owner of Bishop's Family Cycles, and he's coming to us from Tofino, where he is with the family. Hey, Robert, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, the sun is shining, so no complaints here.
So I want to talk about, you started this business. You're downtown, by the way. You're at 1515 Douglas, right near City Hall, near Sherwood, and those restaurants is where you are.
Yep. Yeah, so we're on Pandora, on the Pandora side,
Yeah.
and right next to Sherwood, yeah.
So you started the business during the pandemic. Tell me about that whole journey and how that all came together.
Well, it was just one of those things. Years ago, I bought a cargo bike for my family because we were having a third kid, and, I just could not justify a second car. It made zero sense to me, but it was very hard to get around without two cars and three kids. And so I went down this cargo bike journey 4 or 5 years ago, and then, just kind of rode my cargo bike when I was in town. I used to travel for work 50% of the year. So my previous job had me on the road all the time. And so the pandemic hit, airports shut down. The company I worked for, we laid off everybody because we had to shut down. We were in the tourism industry. And so I had to pause to take a breath and really think about, what we wanted to do. And the bike lanes had all been started to be installed. And I just looked around and I was like, why isn't everyone riding cargo bikes? Why aren't these a thing here? Because I loved mine so much.
Yeah.
And so, after looking around, I realized none of the shops were really supporting it. And so we kind of just looked at it and said, well, let's go for it. It was a good excuse to start a business where it could keep me close to home. That's why it's called Bishop's Family Cycles, is that's my third child. So
Right.
It was one of those spur to be at home, because I missed so much of my first two kids' young childhoods, that it was just one of those kind of things all lined up. And so we just decided to go for it, probably ignorantly, just hey, of course, yeah, it's going to work, right?
Yeah, take a chance. What the
it's
heck,
been
right?
good. Yeah.
We're going to come back and talk about Bishop's story in a couple of minutes too. But first of all, what's a cargo bike?
Well, cargo bike in general is a term for a bike that's specifically designed to carry extra weight. So as opposed to a bike that you would put a regular bike rack on, this is a bike that's been engineered to carry more than a regular bike could carry. I think that's the most broad definition of a cargo bike.
Okay. So tell me about how the business grew during the pandemic, because as I say, a lot of people took up cycling. We're going to talk about reluctant cyclists in a minute. We're going to talk all about the gear and the maintenance and the things you do with the bike to get ready for springtime. In the pandemic, what kind of engagement did you see? Did people really ramp up their bike use?
Yeah, I mean, you and I were chatting a little bit before this. It's hard to know what normal was because we opened during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But as we were doing kind of our business research and our business planning, certainly all signs are pointing to the bike industry in a very, very steady decline year over year. And so we were preparing for this idea that we were in a declining industry. And as we were kind of getting funding to open our door, you could see that was actually completely reversing. So cycling had picked way up. We actually had a really hard time getting even supply to open the store with, because, so many suppliers were like, yeah, we don't have bikes for the people we already deal to. Why would we add more dealers? And then we opened the door, and yeah, we absolutely saw kind of immediate interest because people were at home and looking for something to do, frankly. I mean, bike sales were record breaking. During the pandemic and grew throughout that first year we were open in 2021.
Yeah, sourcing a bike was difficult if you were going to try and take up cycling during the pandemic. So as I mentioned, Amanda and I cycle, and we got into it in earnest about 5 years ago. But when you're dealing with people that you call them reluctant cyclists, people who just don't, why don't they want to do it? What do you hear from them?
Well, I mean, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think Cycling really since the 70s, when the 10 speed boom hit, became a for fitness activity. And like a lot of for fitness activities, unless you were already fit or with a group of people who were doing the sport, it felt threatening to get into. And then bike shops, because bike sales were declining, bike shops tended to be these places where, you know, traditionally more men, men who knew a lot about cycling and wanted to nerd out on kind of cooler bikes. You could go in and it's like they're speaking a foreign language. Someone walks in and they're like, oh, I want a bike. And they're like, well, what kind of bike do you want? What kind of drivetrain? Do you want an SLX? Do you want to? And there's, they just start rattling off of these things. And I could imagine, and my wife really experienced this going into bike shop shopping for our kids. It was very challenging to go in as a newcomer. And I think in Victoria, we're fortunate that there's 27 bike shops and there are bike shops that are better for beginners. But if you don't know that, it's hard to go into a place as a new rider or someone who is not represented heavily in the cycling industry and feel welcome and feel like somebody can start you from the beginning.
Yeah. I remember being a kid when I rode a bike. I was the 10 speeds. Bikes had one speed.
Yeah,
I was the 10 speed, but then
yeah,
the
that's
technology
exactly.
advanced from there. What's the AAA?
AAA is all ages, all access biking infrastructure. So that's part of what, the triple A routing is what Victoria is rolling out, and has been rolling out for quite a few years. And part of that is all ages and abilities is what the three A's are for. And so it's not bike lanes built for, what people call mammals, middle-aged men in Lycra, it's not bike lanes built for people who, are always quoted in the paper as in like, well, I've been cycling for 20 years and I don't need bike lanes. They're not for you,
No.
right? These are specifically designed for what we would call reluctant cyclists or beginning cyclists. Those people who remember biking when they were a kid, want to go bike, but then you go out onto the road and traffic is dangerous and, cars aren't patient and there's not safe places to ride. And so this infrastructure that Victoria is rolling out has really made a huge difference to those reluctant cyclists. We see a ton of people who are buying these big cargo bikes to bike their kids around who have never even ridden a bike since they were a kid, and here they are buying these huge things because they feel comfortable in the infrastructure that's been created.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it again. I use the bike lanes because my office is on Fort Street. When I ride my bike, it's the E&N Trail, and you cross the bridge, and you get on the bike lane, and you're there. And I can get
Yeah.
there faster than it takes me to drive. Cycling as a family, that whole dynamic is pretty cool. I want to talk about that next. We're talking about cycling, bicycles today on Chamber Chats with Robert Kemp, who is the owner of Bishop's Family Cycles downtown on Pandora. So you got a cargo bike to ride with your family and your kids. But the whole, like when I'm on my riding on the weekend and stuff, so many times you'll see an entire family in a little cluster riding along. It just looks like
Yeah,
so much fun.
it's great. I think it's what I remember as a kid going out with my dad on Sundays. We all used to go ride on the rail trail near where our house was, and it was great. And my dad had a seat on the back of his bike for the littlest, and then we had trailer bikes and little kids bikes and all these different things. And I think there's so many ways to get out there with a family, that's whether it's a cargo bike where the kids are actually riding in the bike with you, or whether it's a trailer bike, or whether it's a tow bar, or whether it's these special kid seats. There's so many ways to bike with your family these days.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the accessories and things. Like you mentioned, a bike seat. A bike seat is very important. You think about that for just a minute, because that's what you're sitting on when you're riding the bike, and that stuff really matters. Okay, we talked about cargo bikes. Talk to me about e-bikes. Where are they at, and how's that technology moving along?
Yeah, no, e-bikes are really interesting. So we it's funny because our store at this point is different, I think, than we wrote in our business plan. Initially, we opened for cargo bikes and
Mm.
we really expected to have e-cargo bikes, but some regular bikes. And then we also put in a huge amount of just kind of, recreational bikes. And as our store keeps going, we're carrying less and less recreational bikes because e-cargo bikes, electric assist cargo bikes, have just opened the door for so many people who didn't think they could do it. And e-bike technology has come such a long way that there's just so much high quality out there that is easy to ride, easy to maintain, and built on kind of the open source platform of cycling. So cycling right now is really interesting because like you can go to any bike shop and you can buy new wheels or new cassettes or new axles or any of these bike parts that go on your bike are really easy to source. And e-bikes kind of forked, and you have some e-bikes that are going in this this kind of tech company route where they're building everything kind of closed source and custom and selling it on the internet. And those bikes are really hard to maintain, and those bikes are very hard to deal with in the long run because they look like a bike, but they're not really maintained like a bike.
Right.
There's a lot of companies, I think, making good, high quality motors for bikes that have come a long way. And I think for us in Victoria, we're unique in that probably half the bikes on the road are e-bikes now. And I think e-bikes are wholeheartedly accepted. And I think in most cities, that's not quite the case yet. I think we're ahead of the curve for North America.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. And you take a look at like trail bikes and mountain bikes that have the shock absorbers and all that stuff involved. So the whole evolution of it has been really something to see. But I want to go back now and talk about some of the accessories. Something that's become a very unfortunate reality around here is the type of lock that you put on your bike. And they're getting really sophisticated. So tell me about the range of locks that are around.
Yeah, I think we always have chat with people about locks, and a couple things is, you can go to the pawn shop and buy a cordless grinder for $50 and it will cut through pretty much any lock on the market. It's just a matter of time. And so what's as important as your lock is where you're storing and parking your bike. But locks have come a long way too. We have one lock that does advertise as grinder resistant. It takes a very long time to cut through it. But they have bike trackers now that use Apple's Find My tracker service. We sell bike alarms where you can kind of arm them and walk away so that if the bike starts to shake, it will start making noise. If you're in Bluetooth range, it will alert your phone, right? There's lots of really interesting technology out there that's coming down the pipeline. And even the e-bike motors now are starting to get smarter. And, Bosch is going to start selling a GPS unit that will actually deactivate the e-assist. If the bike is stolen, you can deactivate it remotely and see where it is in GPS. So I think really what's coming down the pipeline is more, I guess you would consider it bike collection, getting the bike back after it's stolen, I think is a lot of that technology so that thieves stop trying to take these modern bikes, which I think is where cars ended up, right?
Yeah.
Being able to identify cars, so being able to identify bikes through Project 529, which is the bike registration network that's being used right now throughout multiple police departments. I think tying the bikes to the owners and making the bikes less useful when they're stolen is really what people are focused on right now. And then for you as a consumer, the longer you can make it take to take your bike, the more inconvenient it is, the less likely it's going to be stolen.
Yeah, the number one reason bikes are stolen is to get someone from point A to point B, and they'll probably just dump the bike. That's kind of the way it is. By the way, if anybody ever tries to steal my bike, there is a GPS on it, and we will find you. Just saying.
There you go.
You talked about helmets. Now, helmets can't over express how important a helmet is. Obviously, it's the law for one thing, but they're really funky now. They've got all kinds of designs and colors, and they don't look like another hockey helmet. They're so much fun.
Yeah. So I think bike helmets have. We focus in urban styled helmets. So we have a lot of people come in looking for, an aero traditional, fast looking bike helmet. And for us as a shop, we made a choice to only focus on more fashionable urban helmets. And I think a lot of manufacturers started realizing that these helmets, especially for cyclists who are in safe infrastructure in town, they're there as an insurance plan. They're not there to necessarily be used a lot. And so trying to make them fit in with the aesthetic of the rider is important. And people don't want to wear this big bucket on their head that's just there for safety. They want to wear it that it's there because it looks nice as well, just like your bike or just like any of these other things you buy. You don't buy everyone looks at the color of the bike they buy. And if anyone tells you they're not doing that, they're not telling the truth, right? And in every accessory you buy, you think about how it looks. And so helmets are pretty cool because a lot of them are playing with designs. We have helmets that have lights built into them now for extra safety. MIPS, which is this multi-impact protection standard, is a headliner system that's now in a lot of helmets that has been shown to lessen the severity of concussions and and have better concussion outcomes. And so for folks who maybe have had head injuries in the past or know they're going to use their helmet, there are these additional helmet safety layers that you can get. There are now e-bike standards coming out of Europe because Europe's way ahead of us on e-bikes. So there are helmets now that are somewhere between a scooter and a bike helmet. So more thicker padding and a higher level of safety for those higher speeds e-bikes have. So there's a lot out there for helmets, and I think thinking about how you're going to use it and what your kind of accident history. I always ask people, like, have you ever used your helmet? Because lots of people, the answer is yes, a lot. And most people, I think, it's no, I've never used my helmet. And so thinking about what you actually need versus what's in the helmet is important.
Yeah, being safe on the bike while cycling is another thing. So see and be seen is important. We're going to talk about that next. Our chamber chat today is all about cycling in one of the most cycling-friendly communities in Canada. We're talking today with Robert Kemp from Bishop's Family Cycles downtown on Pandora Street. So the two things that I use quite often, or most often even on my bike, are the mirror and the bell. It's very important to see what's behind you and that people ahead know you're coming. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so mirrors come in all shapes and all sizes, and I think mirrors give a level of comfort to folks. I think more because people don't use their bells, frankly.
Yeah.
I think the mirrors are for those of us who are using our bells because we hear something behind us and suddenly they're right on your shoulder. And I think mirrors can really help you make sure you're passing safely and you can see people coming on. They all attach to your handlebars or your helmet in some way or another. And there's always a mirror that'll work. And I think they do certainly give you comfort as a rider. And so they are an important accessory. Bells, personally, I think bells should be required. Bells are required in so many places. Reflectors are required. I think a bell should be required as well. Communication is key, especially because we have so many shared paths right now. We have so many different speed of cyclists. And this isn't just because of e-bikes. With the new AAA infrastructure, the people who didn't necessarily say we needed them are enjoying riding them because you can ride faster and you can have more fun. But oftentimes I think there's some unsafe passing or, people forgetting just general respect of all the different ability users. And I think those bells do help that. It helps people feel more comfortable knowing what's coming up behind them.
Tell me about tires. I mean, tires differ. It depends on what you're going to use the bike for, but certain types of bikes could take different types of tires, right, or be interchangeable. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so generally, all your bikes will have a rim on it already, and those rims have a range of tire sizes you can put on it. Mountain bikes have gone really, really big because the bigger your tire is, the easier you're going to be to roll over obstacles. Whereas road bikes are just the opposite. They're very narrow because the narrower the tire you have, the faster you can go, right? Because you're going to have less road resistance. And then there's everything in between. So your e-bike tire probably has real wide tires on it, I would guess.
Yes, very.
And the reason they put real wide tires on e-bikes is because with the motor, you no longer have to worry about rolling resistance. And so what the wide tire does is it gives you a larger air volume, which creates more comfort. And that air volume in that tire gives you a lot more comfort for the ride, especially when you don't have to worry about it dragging, slowing you down. And so I think looking at the type of riding you're doing, the number of people I see with full suspension bikes and knobby tires who never leave the pavement, they're doing themselves a disservice because they're working extra hard to have the look of their bike when really if they had a very smooth tire and something maybe a little bit narrower, they could work a lot less hard. And with tires comes air pressure. It's really, really important to check your air pressure on your tires, right? That needs to be checked really once a week or once every couple of weeks, especially this time of year where the temperature is fluctuating so much. The tube inside your tire is like a balloon. And if you've ever had a balloon in your house, you'll know after a few days that balloon is a completely different shape. And it's not because there's a hole in it. It's just because the air will make its way out eventually.
And again, I'll emphasize, make sure you get the right seat, because if you don't have the right seat, you're not going to be comfortable and you're not going to ride, and you got to make sure you get your brakes checked and all that stuff. But Robert, just to wrap it up here, we want to talk about something that happened with your family that, of course, was unexpected, that was kind of a crisis, and the public have been there to help, and we want to make sure that people will help now, again, if they can. But tell me about your boy.
Yeah, so, our shop is named after my youngest son, whose name is Bishop. And I apologize, this is I talk about it a lot at the shop, and I don't usually have to recap the full story, so I will probably get emotional here. So we opened January 2020, no, February 2021. And we were open for 6 months, and in August of 2021, Bash was off balance, and so we took him to the emergency room just to have him checked out, and we were they did a CT scan, and he had a brain tumor, and so we were medevaced to Vancouver, where he had to do emergency neurosurgery, and then they do a biopsy and they do the tests, and he has medulloblastoma, which is a type of brain cancer. He has what's called Group 3 medulloblastoma, which is statistically the most fatal. And so we did about a year and a half of inpatient treatment at BC Children's, and then we went down to Seattle for proton radiation. And then we were discharged in April of 2022. And then we had a good few months, and then we did our routine scan in August, and it was back already. So generally, the survival rate for medulloblastoma relapse is less than 10%, you know. So we did a little bit extra treatment, but everything we do now is considered palliative. We're in palliative care with him.
So this has meant that you couldn't operate the business the way that you intended to operate it. There are some friends that set up a GoFundMe page to support you and your family, and that's available through your website, or you can certainly connect with Bishop's Family Cycles through the Chamber website. Thank you for sharing that story. We think it's important to get the word out about that to the public so they know what you're going through, and we hope that many will be compelled to keep assisting and helping you to keep your family together and keep the business going. And I know that was difficult, so thank you for sharing that, and we appreciate it very much.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. We're so grateful for the community. We've had to close quite a lot, and the support we've gotten is it's overwhelming. It's amazing.
Yeah.
We're fortunate to be in this city and have this community.
Thank you for the story. Robert Kemp is with Bishop's Family Cycles. Look for them online where the GoFundMe page is, or contact me at the Chamber, or go through the Chamber website and we can connect you with that. Robert, enjoy the rest of your holiday in Tofino. Thank you for spending time with us today, and all the best.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's great to meet you.
Yeah. That's it for this time around. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.